It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Rolling with you until 7 o'clock tonight. It's what we do every single day until it's 6:30 season, Anthony, which we still got a couple more months until the hoops roll around and start knocking us off the air early.
I'm not going to lie, Craig. You said that with some excitement.
I'm happy it's 7 o'clock season. We got stuff to talk about today. Today is, I was scared of the show today. Not like, oh my God, I have to do my job. But like some days kind of plan themselves out, and then other days you really gotta go dig out the content. And we got to a point today, and I'm actually still at that point. I haven't decided what we're doing in the final hour of the show yet. We are overloaded today. And I like that.
Well, that's good because where we were, I want to say a couple of hours ago.
We had a lot of stuff floating a couple of hours ago. We hadn't put it on the rundown yet.
Yeah, that's what it was.
But we're schemed up, we're ready to go, fired up, and we got all kinds of cool stuff for you on the show today, including a lot of calls this hour, because there has been a phrase that has been going around the Commanders universe by the main decision makers that we should parse out, and I am curious what fans think on this, and I'm also curious to suss out what the actual people saying it mean when they say this. Yesterday, Adam Peters would default to the phrase, we're going to do what's best for the team, whenever he got kind of pressed on any kind of question in terms of, hey, why'd you make this decision? We're just going to do what's best for the team. Why'd you make that decision? We thought it was best for the team. And like, duh, I didn't think that you were self-sabotaging. And I don't say that to be like, Adam Peters, you, whatever. Like, no, like, this is why sit-down interviews are great. And press conferences kind of stink because it's a lot easier when you are in a sit-down interview or a radio, like phoner interview, to follow up on something and be like, what do you mean by best for the team? Do you just think he's better for this year? Is that a long-term play? Why did you think he was best for the team? Like, what about that player that you're asking about compared to the other player? And, you know, sometimes executives or coaches or whoever will answer that, and sometimes they'll go, I'd rather keep that private. Okay, fine, but I would like to know. And I think specific to the Commanders this year, that answer varies depending on who you're asking about. What's best for the team is a dynamic statement. It is a statement that moves. Not everything should be geared towards the future. Not everything should be geared towards right now. Not everything is, hey, we went for the high upside traits guy. Not everything is we went for the older veteran. They made individual decisions based off position, based off player, and like that's what the job is. I'm not asking Adam Peters to have some kind of consistency that he makes the same decision everywhere. I'm thrilled that he is a dynamic thinker that clearly is trying to make these decisions through the funnel of what's best for the team, and that some decisions are going to have that standard reasoning of we did what we thought was best for the team, while simultaneously might be a little bit contradictory at certain positions. Well, at that position, I'll give you an example, right? They made upside high-end swings at defensive end, and they would say, like, hey, you know, we're trying to plan for the future. We're trying to, you know, we believe in some long-term projects. We think that these guys could be not just good players, but great players for us. I'd imagine if you pressed on Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Jamin Davis, you get answers something like that. Meanwhile, if you say, well, okay, well, if you're going for higher upside, you know, why did you decide to keep, say, Michael Dieter over Ricky Stromberg? Stromberg was a third-round pick just last year. And they would go, well, we know that Jayden Daniels is a rookie, and, you know, you have to plan in case of injury. And Dieter's a guy that's played a lot of football. He's a veteran, and he's our backup center, and we want a veteran center out there at all times with Jayden. And Ricky didn't play any center last year. He's played 0 NFL center. So that seems relevant. And I'd be like, yeah, look at you being dynamic, having a plan, understanding where the pieces of that fit or how they fit in the puzzle. But like a true puzzle, not all pieces are the same. Sometimes you're looking for the little jagged corner. Sometimes you're looking for the one that always looks like Idaho. I don't know, but there's always a piece that looks like Idaho. And you're trying to plug it in. And so it is a constant moving kind of thing that you're dealing with here. And that phrase, what's best for the team, is one that is not straightforward. And I would love to spend time unpacking that both, I would love to have Adam Peters on. He's actually going to be on Grant and Danny, and we're talking in the hallway. I do believe they are going to ask that question, so we might have a little bit more from Adam Peters on this later in the show. But I'd also like to unpack it with you at 301-230-0980. Like, what do you think is best for the team, if you will, in 2024 for the Commanders? I talked to Logan about this morning on Take Command. Of course, Logan Paulson, my co-host there, 10-year NFL veteran, including 5 here in D.C., maybe 6, many years in D.C., until he ultimately went to Chicago. And then in 2017, he was in San Francisco, where the new assistant general manager, Adam Peters, helped Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch start a build that ultimately ended with so far has multiple Super Bowl appearances, and they've been one of the best teams in football almost since that first year that Peters, Lynch, and Shanahan got to the Bay. So I asked Logan that question. I said, hey, this is a dynamic statement. What do you think it means for Washington when Adam Peters says we're going to do what's best for the team?
So this is all just pure speculation, but I go off a lot of what happened in 2017 when I was in San Francisco with him too, and the team building philosophy seems very similar. And what I mean by that is, like, there was a couple guys that were older that I think were better football players at the time, and then they kind of bank on a young developmental piece. So I think you see that here, and you kind of say, like, obviously KJ Henry, like we were just talking about, is probably, if you had to win a game tomorrow, is the guy you'd want. But Jean-Baptiste was coming on really strong. He's this long, traitsy, tall, athletic guy who was starting to make plays in the preseason. Jamin, the explosiveness, guys that I think you're looking for upside. So when they say best for the team, I don't think it's best for the team necessarily tomorrow. I think it's best for the team 6 weeks from now, 8 weeks from now, because you're kind of hoping for a developmental arc, and that's ultimately what you're gambling on. So this is all just pure speculation, but I go off a lot of what happened in 2007.
Apparently, the repeat function is on. And I think that what Logan said at the end there before the bite unceremoniously restarted. But don't worry, Anthony, I have now turned the repeat function off for the next bite that we play. What Logan says at the end there about 6 to 8 weeks from now, I think should be comforting in some way for fans. That when we talk about this being a long-term project, it's not like you're going to wake up in 3 years and voila, there's a contender, and it's been nothing but misery, sadness, and losing ever since. You're going to see progress this year. I would hope, if it's going well, you should see progress this year. You should see that play style certainly established. You should see a team that is competing week in and week out, is fast, is physical. It looks very different than the sad sack of a football team that wound up wearing burgundy and gold in the last 6 weeks of last year. Everyone was beaten down. Everyone knew that it was a death march towards everyone getting fired. And morale stunk. The quality of play wasn't very good. And we saw what it was. It was uncompetitive, and it just wasn't any fun to watch. I would be stunned if at any point this year that happens for anything longer than a couple of series. It doesn't mean that they're going to win. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to be excited and happy all the time, but there is going to be a standard that's different. And I think we'll see that. And making sure that is happening is how you incubate growth. That, hey, let's make sure we maximize every single week so we can get the most out of these reps, so that we can learn that 6 weeks from now, maybe we don't make that same mistake, or it's not even making a mistake. We do the thing that we want to do a little bit faster. And for guys like Jamin Davis, guys like Javonte Jean-Baptiste, that is really important. But that also doesn't mean that they aren't making some considerations, sometimes with those very same players, for things that are happening right now, something that Logan also pointed out when we talked about it this morning.
Those two defensive ends specifically, I think, are really good examples of that, right? Like, Jamin is not ready just yet, but I do think based on how he's looked through the last 3 preseason games, week 2, 3, 4, like, you're looking at someone that's going to make a significant impact to this team as a pass rusher, right? I think same thing with Jean-Baptiste. He's for sure a rotational guy now, but I think if you look at, again, the development in the Miami game and the New England game, the value he brings on teams, I think that's the other thing that kind of stuck out to me, and Fred Smoot mentioned this a lot on the Command Center show, was just the flexibility. Like, KJ Henry, not the best special teams guy, but Jean-Baptiste was making plays on kickoff coverage, on punt. Jamin Davis can play a little linebacker, can play teams, can play defensive end. It gives you some options in this team. So when I say it's best for the team, I think it's best for the team long term. And I think there's there's something very obvious about that statement, because when you're making a team, like, it's definitely not what's best for the individual, right? Because if it was best for the individual, like, that person would be on the team. So it's always
everybody makes the team. Yay!
Right. And so I think, like, that's kind of an obvious statement to me, but it does kind of encapsulate to me this idea of, like, we're kind of making upside plays on a lot of these athletes.
And that's the thing. Like, upside is great. Things that you can do right now are great. Allowing some flexibility that if they want to try something different in the middle of the year, like, that's all good in year one of a rebuild. Where, to me, when I try to answer this question, actually, I'll do it this way. I actually have a definitive theme for the season. I will tell you what it is next, but we'll also hear from you. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. I will tell you the tie that I think does bind all of this together, and we'll take your calls on the very simple question that is actually very complex. What's best for the team mean for the Washington Commanders in the year 2024? Your calls and my theme next. Every general manager in sports wants to do what's best for the team. But what does that actually mean for the Washington Commanders in 2024? That's the question we're talking about with you at 301-230-0980. And we're talking about it because we heard that phrase a lot over the last 2 days. We heard it yesterday from Washington Commanders general manager Adam Peters.
Yeah, I think, in regards to the draft picks from last year, and I think DQ hit it on the other day, Mitch, these guys were all Commanders and they're all ours, so, and we're thrilled to bring a bunch of them back on the practice squad, and you know how it goes. A lot of them are going to be playing for us this year, and a lot of those guys embody what we're looking for. We just had, in our eyes, some other guys ahead of them, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to keep getting better and become really good Commanders for us. But you're always, we're trying to win, and it goes back to his initial press conference. We're recalibrating, so we're not, we're trying to build for the long term and win championships, year in and year out. But we're also trying to win right now.
So they got to do what's best for the team. Lance Newmark, assistant general manager, today. First question he was asked: what went into building the roster from March when you got here until right now?
Well, it's been a very active 5 or 6 months, whatever it's been. Every day we've come in here with the attitude of trying to get this better, to make this team as competitive as it can be right away, while also trying to build a team that's going to be competitive for the long haul. So every day we just try to find ways to get better, try to find ways to improve our roster, improve our process, whether it's free agency, whether it's the draft, whether it's workouts, whether it's going back on guys that have been hurt. We try to look under every rock and find every opportunity to improve, and we're trying to do that as fast as we can.
Anthony, in Washington, D.C., there's a very good chance that we have some political communications managers listening to the show, some people that work, they're staffers in Congress or wherever, and they are so jealous of Adam Peters and Lance Newmark being so on message. If they could get there, if they're convinced that if they could just get their member of Congress, their senator, their politician of whatever persuasion that they work for here in D.C. to just be on message, they could just do the thing that they tell them to do, say it, nail the press conference on message, that their person could be president. They're convinced.
You might be onto something.
Here's the thing, though.
Uh-oh.
It's not about nailing the message. It's about the message being the substance. It's about the fact that this is actually how they operate. This isn't a group of guys just selling you a bill of goods. Are they politicizing the speaking points a little bit in terms of being a little more vague and making sure that they're not too detailed while also saying something substantive? Yes, but they truly believe in, hey, we got a decision to make. How's this going to affect us now? How's this going to affect us later? And then they make decisions based off of the balance of those things. And that is how competent decision-making works. That's how competent leadership works. It's not about, I listen to some political podcasts sometimes and I get a little driven up a wall because it's the message. And it's no. The problem for some politicians, for some companies, for anybody who has a public-facing anything is often not that they're not nailing the message. It's that we're reflecting reality. And if you have a good story to tell, yes, you have to be skilled in telling it, but it starts with having a good story to tell. And the way they do business, they have, I think, a story to tell. And I said I would get back to kind of the theme of what I think ties all this stuff together. If they had to describe in one phrase and in one synopsis what it means to be best for the team in 2024, I think it is giving them clarity to launch into 2025 and beyond. And so what I mean by that is if you look at positions defensively where they might need to invest major resources and they are taking big upside swings, they're doing it because they want to find out, do they have something where they don't have to invest those resources at edge, at wide receiver, at corner, 3, at offensive line to an extent, with 3, 4 there, really expensive, the 4 probably most expensive non-quarterback positions in the sport. Oh my God, if Emmanuel Forbes can actually be what they thought he was when he got drafted, then we don't have to spend stupid money on a number 1 corner or our number 1 draft pick on a number 1 corner. Same at wide receiver if Terry is awesome, which it looks so far so good on that. They've already discovered that Jahan was not going to be a viable number 2 for them. But if Tiami Brown or Noah Brown or Olamide Zaccheaus emerges as a legitimate number 2 for the meantime, well, that changes the literal mathematical equation of how they spend their resources moving forward. By the same token, they got to make sure that Jayden is protected and insulated and grows to a point that's starting hopefully as soon as next year, but certainly 2 years from now, that he's ready to be a top 10 quarterback in the league, which is what they drafted him to be, if not top 5. And so some of the offensive line choices are done with more veteran type guys in mind because they want less variance there. They're less willing to take an upside risk because the downside might be too large. At left tackle, they didn't really have that much of a choice. And so Brandon Coleman winds up somewhat being there by default with Cornelius Lucas as a sound backup behind him. So to me, when I look at the theme that ties this entire year together, it is ensuring that there is clarity, putting the pieces in place to have clarity at major positions going into 2025 and going into their second offseason here, the first one for which they will have actually been around for the season, which will allow them to move and shake in the ways that they need to starting next season. 301-230-0980 is the phone number, 301-230-0980, the team 980 listener line. Let's go to our guy Ross in Tampa. Ross, thanks for calling. What do you think it means to be the best for the team for the Commanders in 2024?
What's going on, Craig? How's it going, man? Hey, before I get started, I told Anthony, man, tonight's going to be my first night recording a podcast. I let my buddies listen to that strip club story that you posted, and then they strong-armed me. They said I didn't have a choice. I got to talk, so yeah, wish you the best of luck on that.
Very funny. Definitely best of luck. It's harder than it looks, but also everyone has a podcast, so the stakes are low.
I think you ain't lying.
All right, what you got?
We're close in age, Craig. I'm 33 years old. Do you remember the show Rocket Power?
I do remember Woogity Woogity. I remember the show Rocket Power. Of course I remember the show Rocket Power. Anthony, are you old enough to remember the show Rocket Power?
Yes, I am. Why are you guys disrespecting me, man?
It's one of those things that if it didn't hit an exact window, then you might not have. So you might have been just too young for the window.
Yep. I was there.
All right. How are we Ross, how are we on Rocket Power? Bring us back.
So there was an episode where the guys were cleaning up the beach, but there was always trash surfacing from the shore, and they were getting frustrated. Where's this trash coming from? Oh, my goodness. And then eventually they realized there was a hole in the valve off by the dock. So they filled up the hole, and then they said, okay, we got to clean this trash up one more time, and then we got ourselves a clean beach. And it also ties into what you were talking about when the guy called in using the infamous B word that we won't use on your show about how we waited this long, let's wait a little bit longer. And that's where I'm going with this. It's like what's best for the team is what the head honchos of the football operations feel as though their moves are, which are moves that are best for the team. So I feel like there will always be division within the fan base where you trade Jahan Dotson and people will equivalate that to, oh, man, we just traded Patrick Mahomes for a conditional fifth-round pick. But it's like I told Rush yesterday, man, whatever these guys do, I'm fully on board. I wish they would have kept the edge rusher, but it's also one of them things like, hey, they let him go for a reason. I trust what they're doing.
Right.
So the whole best for the team thing, I'm fully on board with what these guys got going on. And, hey, man, we need more Shanes and need more Marvins calling you because when they call you, get you fired up, and you go on these nice little tirades, it's great radio, man.
I don't know if it's good for my health, though.
Have a good one, man.
Thanks, Ross. I don't know if it's...
You come down to Tampa next Sunday. Come on, man.
If you want to buy my plane ticket, I'll put you on hold, and you can tell Anthony your credit card information. If not, I think I'm gonna watch from here. That wasn't a yes,
hey,
Ross.
Man, you have a good one.
All right, thanks, Ross. Appreciate it. Ross from Tampa, everybody. Check out his podcast. Apparently, Anthony, to go to Ross's analogy for Rocket Power. Bruce Allen was the hole that was dumping trash on the beach.
Wow. Way to, bring it full circle.
Yeah. And then Ron Rivera poked a new hole, seemingly, based off of, the player acquisition history in the last 4 years since Bruce was gone.
Yeah.
So actually, Dan was the hole that just kept letting trash get on the beach.
Dang.
Yeah. It's a good analogy. I like that. Because that's how we treat a lot of stuff. We treat symptoms, not causes. And it seems like they've treated the cause now, and then it's going to take a little bit to clear the symptoms. And then voila, eventually, hopefully, Lord willing, we'll have a good football team to talk about here in D.C. It might take a while. It might also be this year, because that is something that I thought Newmark was really interesting on, and Peters said this yesterday. They think this team is better than they were anticipating. And they have no good reason to say that out loud. In fact, I would argue, if we're going back to the communications and being on message, if I was advising them from a PR standpoint, I'd be like, keep the expectations down. I'd be like, you go up there and say, hey, we're realistic. We know this is a long process, and, we're excited about what we have, but we don't know how it's going to play out this year. We just want to empower Dan and to do his best from a coaching standpoint, and these players to be their best, and then we'll figure it out from there. Like, I would be so non-committal to being good, and instead both the GM and the assistant GM went, I don't know, we'll see, and that definitely is something that made me go, Have they been burgundy pilled, or are they onto something? We'll find out starting next week in Tampa, and I won't be there unless Ross wants to call back and buy me a flight. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. So what does it mean? Best for the team in 2024. Your calls answering that question next on the Hoffman Show. What does best for the team mean for the Commanders in 2024? We're asking you. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Told you a little bit ago, I think it's any move that can help provide clarity for the future. It is something that supports Jayden Daniels so we can start to understand just how good he is. It is a move that allows for a player that you think has upside to get the repetitions that he needs to figure some stuff out and grow and learn and have experience and make plays and gain confidence. It's all of those things. And sometimes some things might seem contradictory because it's not all moving in one direction or all in another direction. But it also is, some stuff to buffer and support the franchise to win games right now because they do want to do some of that this year. It's not like they're like, man, we got to tank our butts off because we got to be in the top of the draft next year because there's a ton of quarterbacks. They got their quarterback. So they have the power to move forward now. And if they think they can be good, and even if they're middle of the pack, like that's not ideal from a long-term planning standpoint because you'd rather have the top 10 pick if you're not going to win the Super Bowl. Like that's just the reality. But there are upsides to winning some games and gaining some confidence and learning some things about yourself and being in meaningful games in December. Like there's upside to all of that. 301-230-0980. Let's go to the phone lines. What does best for the team mean in 2024 through your eyes? Let's go to Fast Eddie. Eddie, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Mr. Hoffman, thanks for taking my call as always, and Anthony as well. I think, as always, I've been calling in to 980 for years and years, is just protecting this young man. I'm 100% in on the rebuild. I agree with everything you just said about trusting the process, trusting this coaching staff. But really the best thing this year is keep them, hand the ball off, short dunk plays. And, we're not going to win. I can't even see us win 7 or 8 games. So hopefully we get a high draft pick. If not, we trade back, get as many offensive linemen as we can. We got enough money in the war chest to pay position players next year too, to bring in a receiver, whoever we want, and just keep this man not getting hurt. I'm a little older than you from the last caller. I'm a 47-year-old man. I've seen all the variations of my team over the years, and I just do not want to see. I've seen enough. He's the future. We can't get him hurt. I'll shut up and I'll listen to you guys talk. Thanks again for taking my call, boss.
Yeah, you got it, Eddie. Thanks for calling and thanks for the passion. Clearly care about the team a lot. And I do think sometimes that care can make you have those flashbacks. I'm not getting after Eddie or saying anything or trying to put words in his mouth, but like Eddie saw what happened. We all did. You don't have to be anyone that's paid attention to football here in the last 25 years saw what happened to Robert. And we know that while there's other stuff, I think, with Robert that's at this point pretty well known and documented that may have inhibited his career, the injury plays the most significant part. It is the turning point. Does he learn to overcome some of that other stuff? Do things just play out differently in a way that allows him to mature into playing quarterback here successfully if he doesn't get hurt? And so, yeah, that 100% is a relevant thing. The one thing I would say about Jayden, though, and it was something that makes me feel good about 2024 for Washington, is his mental makeup is different. Like, he is – I would be stunned if 10 years from now Jayden Daniels didn't work out and we look back and it's like, dude just didn't have it up top. Like, he couldn't handle the position. Like, he's already proven it. There was another example today. Apparently, he went to Dan Quinn and asked – hey, am I allowed to stay after practice and work with Noah Brown because we want to get him caught up for week 1? Like, is that okay? What? Your starting quarterback asking permission to work with your newly acquired wide receiver to get him caught up? Like, normally that's a Sam Hartman job, right? It's hey, practice squad quarterback, let's go out and run some routes. And that's if the guy wants to. And, credit to Noah Brown, he apparently wanted to. But Jayden was like, no, like, I understand that this guy was brought in for a reason. Like, he's talented. Like, let's go. How do we get him up to speed? Hey, I know this is hard. Like, we just spent a whole offseason learning the offense. This guy's going to be a part of it. Like, I need to get rapport with him. Like, Jayden is this stuff isn't performative. It's substantive. He is the kind of guy that just is like, oh, this is what it takes to win? Well, then let's do that. Like, that is how his brain has worked since his final year at LSU, when he just kind of was unshackled from the holds of being a college student. He was a grad student with not a lot of class load. And he's like, all right, well, let's see what I can do with this quarterback thing. Oh, this VR stuff is cool. Bang, bang. Hey, Coach Kelly, can I get into the building earlier? I got stuff I want to do. Hey, I'm going to start working out at 5:30. If anybody wants to join me, come on. Next thing you know, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, like they're all there. Because that's who they've got at the helm. And so, yeah, I would say in any way that it is protecting, insulating, and enhancing Jayden Daniels, that is what is best for the team for this year, next year, the year after that, and hopefully a decade on into the future. Let's go to one of our new fantasy football compatriots, Tion. Tion, what's up, bro? How are you and what you got here on what's best for the team in 2024? Going once? Going twice. I know his phone worked yesterday because Anthony, he got in the fantasy football league.
Yeah, I was just talking to him. Maybe put his phone down for a hot second.
Maybe. I got a lot. I hate that. It's like you get a flat tire in the middle of the show.
Yeah.
You're just driving down the road, having a good discussion, talking about stuff. Let's go to the phones. Bang bang. Splat.
Yeah.
Yikes. See if Lance Newmark can save us here. The assistant general manager of the team speaking today in Ashburn, and a couple of interesting questions asked of him, I thought, including what the ideal intangibles are for the players on this team, because they're going to talk a lot this year about play style and leadership and culture and all these kinds of things. And so as an assistant GM or a GM in Newmark and Adam Peters' case, what does it mean to actually go find those things?
I mean, I feel like at their core they have to love football, and they have to love to work, and they have to love to be in the building. It's not just game day; it's a process, and they have to love the process. It's not for everyone. This is a demanding environment, and it's a team environment. It's not. It's about winning games as a team, and about working hard together. And I think those are the core traits that we look for: people that love football, that love to be around each other, and love to work.
Honestly, having an answer to that question is almost more important than what the answer is. If you're like, yeah, people that hate football and that kind of are lazy, like that's really what we're about, yeah, that would be problematic. But if you have a clear vision on what it looks like, it is so much easier to find. And then you get to the actual football side. Like, what does it mean to find the right players to fit your team? What's best for the team at each position, and find those traits? Something that he worked on with the scouts and Peters worked on with the scouts in year one, trying to fit a Dan Quinn, Joe Witt Jr., Cliff Kingsbury-led team.
I can't give you a specific example. Like, I feel like everybody we drafted and everybody we signed to some degree met those criteria. Whether everybody checked every box, I wouldn't say that, but we try to get the right people that fit the scheme for what we're trying to do. And everything that we did in terms of signing or drafting was intentional with that in purpose,
And that's the stuff they don't want to tell you. Those are the secrets that they're like, no. Which I think is kind of funny, because in some ways it's not that hard to figure out. It's pretty clear they like traitsy guys at defensive end. Like Javonte Jean-Baptiste. Hey, let's convert Jamin Davis. Hey, like we were having this conversation this morning on Take Command, Anthony. I wish I had thought about this 30 seconds ago. If we were to do a blind resume of Chop Robinson and Jamin Davis, I don't think they'd be that different. Like if I were to do a side-by-side, arm length, height, weight, size, 40 time, all that kind of stuff. All right, one is 6'3", 254, 32.5-inch arms, had an athleticism score of 84. The other, hold on one second, I can do this quickly. Draft profile, because that's where that is. So we had 6'3", 254, 32.5-inch arms, 4'4", 840. 10'8" broad, 34.5-inch vertical. The other is 6'3.5", 235, 33-inch arms, 94 athleticism score. I don't have the actual 40, etc. But his raw athletic score was 94. Who's who? First guy, Chop Robinson, or is the first guy Jamin Davis?
First guy's Jamin.
You're wrong. First guy's Chop.
Chop ran a 4.48.
Yeah, 6'3".
Oh my God.
The only difference is about 20 pounds, which obviously they're going to have Jamin add weight if he's going to play edge for real.
That.
6'3", 254, 32.5-inch arms, 4.48 40. But 84 raw athleticism score. Jamin is a half-inch taller, has longer arms, can add the weight, and had a raw athleticism score of 94. And from a production standpoint in school, like, Chop didn't have a lot of sack production. And, like, that's the kind of upset. Like, in some ways, they drafted a Chop Robinson-type player. They just didn't. They inherited him and switched positions and asked him to, they're going to need him to put on weight if he's going to do it for real, which I'm sure he already has put on some.
Yeah.
So I just think that, like, clearly at some positions we know what they want. And the question is going to be over time, like, is it because that's what you always want? Or is that because, you know, that's what's best for the team right now to take some of those upside swings here, some of those safer picks there, et cetera, et cetera. All right, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Back to the NFL at 5 o'clock with a guest that is very special to me. Very excited to share an interview with you at 5 o'clock. Never read the comments at 5:30. You'll hear more from Lance Newmark, Adam Peters, Jayden Daniels, Dan Quinn, all at 6 in our Pick 6. But coming up next, quick trip to the hardwood as yet another record falls in Indiana. Why is football America's dominant sport? And how did the Super Bowl become the biggest event on earth? We'll talk to someone about it coming up at 5 o'clock who wrote a book on the subject. And it's someone that I have great fondness for. We'll explain coming up in Not My Beat at 5. But, Anthony, last night before we get back to football and the dominant sport of America, the Mystics won their third straight game. The Fever won their third straight game. And we saw another record go down in Indiana. We'll get there in a second. I got to say, Mystics, we're going the wrong way for the draft pick here. What are we doing? Winning games, you silly geese. No, it's great. It's great to see. And I think it's just proof of something that we've talked about all year with this team, Anthony, which is if Brittany Sykes has just been healthy all year, this team is not floating at the bottom of the WNBA standings.
Yeah, we see the impact that she has on the offensive end and defensive end, and ultimately just, also helps out her teammates. And, we've had a couple of people go down, like Shakira. She went down again. And
freaking hate that for her.
I know. And people are continuing to step up. But I think Brittany Sykes being back, I think we're leaning on her and, like, she's, actually carrying us to a lot of these wins.
Do you know how hard it is to be a +9 and a +- when you're a dominant, like, ball handler type player on a night where you go 2 for 9? And that's what she was last night. Like, she struggled. She could not buy a bucket. Mm-hmm. But her relentlessness at the end of that game, the pressure she kept putting on Chicago, like, it was huge. And then defensively, what she does, obviously tremendous. And so just to watch her do her thing was great. Ariel Atkins, a really nice night. 15 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. And Stephanie Dolson leading the way with 17.6 boards. And I will say, like, by the way, because he's in the fantasy league now, I feel like I can talk about Tony more. My guy Tony Squares, he did a video the other day that involved talking about Angel Reese. And the comments were dumpster fire because that's what happens if you make a video about Caitlin or Angel on the internet and you're on TikTok or you're on wherever. And then he made another follow-up video that was basically like, why can't we make funny content about these people? Like, why can't we do? And it was just like a devil on or like an angel and a devil type thing. It was really, really funny. So I'm gonna say a basketball observation about Angel Reese and hope that people don't jump out of the woods to come and get me. But people like to talk about Angel like in the Rookie of the Year stuff. It's like, well, what about defense and rebounding? And it's like, defensively, she's still a rookie. She's got tremendous anticipation. I think her hands are fantastic. Like her ability to steal the basketball for a big is pretty high. Her shot blocking is non-existent. And she still has some players that give her trouble. And last night in some big spots, like Stephanie Dolson took advantage of the fact that Angel Reese is, for as great of a rookie season as she's having, is still a rookie. And also late in that game when Chicago needed a bucket and Angel had the ball in her hands, like that's not her game yet. So I just think that like that was kind of interesting to watch that play out and knowing what some of the commentary is because people make it their entire personality to defend certain players, especially in that sport. And it's like, no, she's allowed to grow. And like I'm not even saying this as like any kind of long-term criticism. And if they play again in 2 weeks, might be something different because that's what happens when you're a rookie. You have nights that are good and nights that are bad. But it was a reminder, like, it's not like she's some lockdown defender already, and Steph played a huge role in breaking her down last night and getting the win for the Mystics. So, good job, Mystics. Congrats to Eric and the crew. 3 straight wins for them. Would love to see them finish the season on a high note. As we talked to Mike Tebow last week, he talked about how, like, there's a lot of evaluation happening for them, and that's that. Anthony, you're allowed to reapproach the microphone now. When I started talking about Angel Reese in a basketball setting, purely in basketball analysis, Anthony leaned back away as if to say, I am not a part of this. Nobody please come get me.
Oh, no. I was more so just turning to you so I could clearly and eloquently, my gosh, eloquently listen to you. That is an
amazing word to stumble on.
I know. Just hear what you had to say about, the Rookie of the Year race in the W because I've been going back and forth with people about, Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, and it's just I've come to a conclusion where you're on one side of the fence. No matter what Caitlin does, no matter what Angel does,
People have made up their minds.
Yeah, you're fixed
And
on like who you.
so
who
much
you
of
want.
it is not about basketball, and it's silly.
Exactly.
But I don't play those games. I talk about basketball. And last night, Caitlin Clark had another Caitlin Clark game. Although this is somehow lately on the lower end of her games. 19 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 7 turnovers. She is still turning the ball over at an absolutely absurd rate. But they have figured out how to deal with it. And part of that is Kelsey Mitchell is out of her freaking mind right now. She 8 for 14 from the field, 4 for 7 from 3, 23 points on the night. She is playing outrageously good basketball. You damn near had a double-double or a triple-double from Aaliyah Boston at one point. It seemed like she was on track. Her rebounding tailed off at the end, but 10, 8, and 6 from her. And Caitlin hits 3 of her 12 threes, which is obviously not great percentage-wise, but it was enough to break the tie that she had, and now she stands alone as the rookie record holder for three-pointers made in a season. So congrats to her in a year where, yes, she is going to win Rookie of the Year because she deserves it. And right now, Indiana is on a roll. And frankly, Anthony, like when you look at the playoff standings, and they beat a Connecticut team, by the way, that's awesome.
Yep.
That is fantastic. That is one of the best teams in the league.
Very physical defensively.
And Caitlin could not handle them earlier in the season.
Mm-hmm.
And Dejanay Carrington does a really good job on her. But, like, that's the thing. Right now, if you do a really good job on her, you hope that she has 19 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 7 turnovers. And you got to stop everybody else. And they couldn't stop everybody else.
Yeah, I'm excited for the end of the season because I want to say it's like 2 more weeks left.
Yeah, most teams have 8 to 10 games left.
Yeah, it's about 2 more weeks left. And they also have a game here. I don't know if we're going to be able to go to that game.
Why not? Who's we?
I think it's going to be in Cap 1.
It is in Cap 1.
Oh, yeah, well.
So I'm saying, why wouldn't we be able to go?
Well, I will definitely inquire. But
Oh, you're talking sitting close.
yes.
Oh, I'll go if I don't got to sit close. I'm not that bougie.
Well, I'm not saying I necessarily need a ticket close to the action, but still,
I would like one.
it is still hard to get tickets in there
I would like one, but
if it hasn't sold out already.
yeah, but we got ways to get in the building, Anthony. We're professionals. There's a chance that we'll do the show from the building beforehand.
I like the way you think.
Anyway, I would not want, like, of the teams on the back half of the standings right now, obviously you don't want the Aces in the playoffs, and somehow they're in the 5th seed after they had a mind-blowing loss.
To the Wings.
Yeah, to the Wings a couple nights ago. The Mercury, like, yeah, they present challenges, but they're a back-end playoff team. Chicago, I wouldn't honestly be scared of because I don't think their guard play is good enough for the playoffs. Like, that's a team that is overachieving in year 1 of a rebuild. Like, good for them. And that's not a shot. Like, they're good for them. But they are 11-19 currently and in the 8th playoff spot because it's only a 12-team league. Meanwhile, Indiana has opened up a huge lead, a 3.5-game lead on them. They're just after their just horrendous start to the season where they didn't look like a functional basketball team. They didn't realize that they were going to get Caitlin Clark and didn't build an offense around her. They're 15-16, and playing them in the playoffs feels like a nightmare. They're 7-3 in their last 10.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to play them.
Want
at
no
all.
part of them. None. 0. All right. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, we will let you hear a part of an interview that I did last week with a former professor of mine. And before you go, like, what? You're having your former professor on. He was a producer at ESPN for nearly 30 years and then left to be a professor of broadcast at Syracuse, where he taught me in a class called Super Bowl and Society. So it's all about how the Super Bowl plays into the advertising and just kind of the pop culture of America. It was a really fascinating class. And then Dennis decided to write a book out about it. So we talked for a good long time. We cut the interview down to a more radio digestible length, and we're going to play you some of the best of that interview next here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Hour number 2 of the Hoffman Show here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Top Commanders headlines for you at the top of the next hour. That's 6 o'clock sharp. But in a moment, we'll play Not My Beat for you. So Not My Beat today is a bit of a special edition, and it's one that Anthony can co-sign because it is with my old professor at Syracuse, Dennis Denninger. Now, Anthony, you had Denninger as well. What class did you have Denninger for?
It was a Super Bowl.
You had Super Bowl in Society.
I think it's the same class as a 4-week class.
Okay, for us, it was a full semester.
I think ours was like 4 weeks, 1 credit.
Oh, no, ours was like a full
I don't
class.
think I did.
But I took mine was the first one. So this we talk
First
about
one
in the
ever.
full interview. I cut this out of this version that everyone's about to hear, but so there's a class at Syracuse University called Super Bowl in Society, and it's how the Super Bowl has become a part of American society and the biggest sporting event in the world, and has affected broadcast media and advertising and all these different things. And Denninger decided to write a book about it, which is why I was talking to him about this. I love any excuse to talk to him. Actually, he was at the Super Bowl last year on Radio Row, and he and my wife and I went around and toured like the Super Bowl experience thing, and that was awesome to walk around with Denninger because he's like, oh, this and this factoid. Like, it was amazing. As you guys hear, so smart, such a great storyteller, all that kind of stuff. But what they've done with the class is Dennis now numbers them with the Roman numerals. So, like, it's Super Bowl in Society, I think this year, XV, 15. I was in 1 before there was a Roman numeral. I was the first ever edition of this class.
Wow, that's pretty dope. Then I got to pull mine up then.
All right, well, you figure out.
I'm curious.
You got to figure out what you had him for and what year it was and what edition of the class. But we have the full version of this interview in our podcast feed. You have to scroll back a couple of days to find it, but it is there, and the full version is on my YouTube channel as well, at Craig Hoffman, of how the Super Bowl became what it is, the biggest day in America, a day that really is like a holiday. And so that is today's Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
It is my absolute pleasure to be joined now by a man who had a long, storied career in television, then decided to become a professor, and then he decided to write a book. The book coming out soon is The Football Game That Changed America. It is about the Super Bowl, which tracks because the class that he started teaching at Syracuse is a class called Super Bowl in Society, of which I took the first ever one. Dennis Denninger, welcome to the show.
Thanks for inviting me, Craig, and it's good to see you again. You don't look a whole lot older than when you did back there. What year did you take that, as a sophomore or junior? Do you recall?
It would have been, I think it was actually my senior year, because I was only at Syracuse for 2, and I'm pretty sure that was my senior year, but it might have been my junior year. I don't know.
Well, you made good choices while you were there then.
I did. And when you look at the Super Bowl compared to these other major events, what are some of the through lines of whether it's a tennis major or really, I mean, the World Cup would be the biggest one, or a Champions League final would be the biggest one. And then what are some of the things that you think make the Super Bowl unique and in its own thing here in the U.S., but also its place in the global stage?
World Cup soccer and the tennis majors and international horse racing tend to have far more diverse international audience, spread far and wide. I believe that the number of countries that Wimbledon sells their media rights to is something like 145 countries. On 145 countries, you'd be hard-pressed to get enough people to say what gridiron football is. So the Super Bowl is far more of a concentrated fan base in the United States, and it is an overwhelming event in that, okay, if you're watching Wimbledon in England and there isn't a British player, well, maybe you're not watching it as closely as you would. But when you're watching the Super Bowl, it really doesn't matter who the teams are in the Super Bowl. You're going to get a huge audience. And what the NFL is doing is they are working on expanding that global audience. They want the Super Bowl to become a far more of have a greater footprint around the world. I remember being at the Australian Open, and it wraps up in late January, And I remember watching the Super Bowl at the 9 Network headquarters on that Monday morning, because Sunday night was Monday morning over there, and going to a Super Bowl party and folks getting all excited about it. And I think there was an NFL player who had come from Australia, and he was there as their analyst. So that kind of thing they want to replicate around the world, and they're doing more and more of these international games. They started the first international game ever goes back to 1926. Obviously, it wasn't televised, and it was a game in Toronto. New York played a Toronto Maple Leafs. They didn't have the Argonauts at the time. But what they've done now is, this year they're expanding to Brazil. Every single time they play in a British stadium, whichever one it is, it's an instant sellout. The games last year, the past couple of years in Germany have been huge. And going forward, that's one of the things, I think one of the things that people will find interesting in this book is the last chapter is my projections for what Super Bowl 100, Super Bowl C, will look like in the year 2066. Now, hopefully, lots of your listeners and viewers and folks who subscribe to the podcast will still be around in 2066, and maybe they can prove me right or wrong. But a lot of it has to do with technology, and technology has always been this driving force behind which creative minds follow. So if it becomes possible, then creative minds will say, what can we do with this? Like, you could not have created ESPN if it were not possible for geosynchronous orbit satellites to deliver communications. If somebody hadn't developed that, it would have been, a service that would be delivered via landlines. It just would not have happened. And fiber didn't exist at the time. And fiber has delivered now a lot more than what satellites do. And that was, again, a technological advance. So when you look at technology, by the end of this decade, the return of supersonic transport will be with us. There are planes that are being tested at 2 American companies already that they can carry about 80 to 85 passengers, and they'll go twice the speed of sound. Now you're talking international. You could just as easily include London as one of the teams in your NFC or AFC East, because you can fly there in less than 4 hours. If you can fly to London in less than 4 hours, that's less time than it takes you to get to Seattle. So suddenly the world gets smaller, and the NFL will reap the benefits of that.
That's fascinating, especially as someone who just got off of an international trip and definitely wishes that plane ride from to and fro to Paris was a little bit quicker. One of the things that I have always been fascinated with when it comes to the NFL and football and the popularity is the fact that the game at the center of it all is so surface level understood by most of the people watching it. Getting to cover the league, like the amount of detail that goes into a game plan that these coaches, that these players think about on a week in, week out, snap in, snap out basis. It's so much deeper than the ways that we talk about the game as a public. And I'd say we as a member of the media, yes, I perhaps know more about those details than the average person who hasn't spent a decade covering the NFL. But at the same time, the way that we do the analysis on television isn't wrong either. You have to be good on third down or whatever. You don't turn the football over. That actually is pretty important, even if coaches spend their sleepless nights thinking about receiver splits and should I stack this or bunch that and yada yada. What is it about football that you think has allowed that to be the centerpiece at the very core of this gigantic universe that has spawned around it, that includes, advertising and politics and media and all the things that you write about it in the book? What is it about football at the core that allows it to be that linchpin?
I want to go back in time. I'm going to quote what Lamar Hunt said. And Lamar Hunt, in his late 20s, had a lot of money. His father was H.L. Hunt, who had a huge oil business in Texas. And Lamar Hunt was thinking about, we've got to bring a professional team to Texas. Imagine the 1950s. There was no professional sports team in the state of Texas. So Lamar Hunt was thinking, well, should I bring a baseball team or bring a football team? And he watched the 1958 NFL championship game, which went down in history as the greatest game ever played. It went to sudden death overtime. And upwards of 40 million people were watching in that overtime. The audience built. And Lamar Hunt came away from that saying, football is made for television. And this has been echoed a number of times. You have great bursts of action. You have individual stars, and you have time in which, in between each of these bursts of action, to reset what's coming next or tell the story of someone. You've got 30 to 40 seconds in between. When they started covering the NFL, they didn't even have instant replay. That didn't come along till 1963. So there was a lot of talk that was going on, in the games between plays. But each of these plays is like this special little nugget of something that's unexpected that can happen. And it's also a great sport in that you have a lot of variables. You've got 11 players on each side, and any two of them could get involved, or any 5 or 6 if they tap the ball one way or the other. And you've got so many different ways in which the ball can move. You can have it batted back and go sideways, forwards, lateral. A lot of sports, tennis, the ball pretty much goes either front or back, you know what I'm saying? Or bowling, it better go ahead toward the pins. So there are certain sports that have fewer variables than football. There are variables in a number of other team sports. Soccer is one of them. But soccer doesn't come in these interspersed bursts of action with time in between. So I think it's a perfect audience sport, and it's a great way to develop storylines, and there's great interest, and it does have drama, and it does have contact. There is I don't want to say it is not necessarily a violence, but there is this confrontation. There are collisions that, oh my goodness, that made the ball go this way. Or, this guy bounced up, or, John Elway doing a helicopter turn in the Super Bowl when he's hit at the goal line, gets back up, et cetera, having scored, and they win the game. But there's so many different variables, I think, that capture people's imaginations. Even though in football, you never see these guys without their helmets when they're in play. So it takes away a little bit, like you and I. This interview would be a far less interesting if all you could see was our eyes, So that's why you get storytelling. You see them on the sideline; they roll in video. You hear sound bites from them, and so you actually see their faces. So it does have its restrictions, but it certainly has a whole lot more going for it, and it's attracted a great audience. And when I didn't mention the word violence. There's a concern in many quarters about the game of football being a game that leaves people seriously injured or causes them to have a greater rate of mortality. And as the NFL works toward making it a safer game, I think you'll find that becomes a little less of a concern, hopefully. But there's certain things about sports in which men or women collide with force that attract attention. There are not a lot of high school mixed martial art teams, are there? Did you went to high school? Was there an MMA team at your school? No.
There was not.
Is the UFC a giant international success? Yes. So whether or not players continue to play football at the high school level or at younger levels probably does not have a lot of impact on whether or not the NFL succeeds, because the collisions, the power and all of it is what is drawing attention. And there will be players, if they even have to train at individual private sites, there'll be players who are saying, I really would like that $30 million contract, and maybe I will take a risk. There are certain high risk, high rewards professions that still exist in American society. Consider rock star. Think of all the rock stars who have lived into their 70s and 80s. High risk, high reward. So it's one of those things that that is also part of the lure. And is this person going to be the survivor? This person's going to be stronger than the other one. There's so many different things at work in football that I think draw mass audiences.
I had never considered the kind of the formatics of the game before and how perfect it is for television. That's really interesting, as well as all the other stuff you add there. What's your favorite thing that you learned in the process of writing the book that you didn't know when you started writing it, even though you've been teaching a Super Bowl class since I was in school?
Favorite thing? You know what? I'll tell you what. Joe Namath is this central figure in the history of the Super Bowl and of the last 5 decades of the NFL. But I did not realize that the NFL was actually thinking about scrapping the whole idea of a Super Bowl after the first 2 in which the Green Bay Packers won handily. And it looked to people like, okay, this thing's going to continue as we got a major league team playing a minor league team. So why should we tune in? And the ratings actually were lower for Super Bowl III. The number of television viewers was down. Everybody expected the Colts were an 18-point favorite, that they were going to win. And that was pretty interesting to me. What a pivotal role Joe Namath and the Jets played in the actual continuation of this huge colossus that we know today. Might have just fizzled away and become yet another, like an NFL championship game. And the great thing about the Super Bowl is that it's planned for a neutral site 4 or 5 years in advance. You can promote the hell out of it. Every other American sport, the NBA, World Series, you don't know where it's going to be until a week and a half before it starts. You don't know where the NBA championship is going to be from year to year. So that's one of the great things about the Super Bowl, and the very fact that its survival depended pretty much on the result of one game. And that was pretty interesting.
That is very interesting. And nothing good has happened to the Jets ever since. So, sorry to all my Jets fans and cousins about that.
Maybe in my forecast for 2066, maybe I should have forecast that the New York Jets finally make it back to a Super Bowl. I'll tell you what's sad is that there are a few teams, original NFL teams, the Detroit Lions and the Cleveland Browns, that have not made it to a Super Bowl. And that's one of the things that I'm rooting for, is that one of these teams with great tradition that has had the support of a loyal community year after year after year will finally make it to the Super Bowl. And what a wonderful story that would be.
That would be. I am personally pulling for Detroit to pull that off. Love what they're doing. Cleveland, they can wait another decade until some of the bad actors in their current organization are gone. But that's much more about our regular show, Dennis, than an interview like this. Dennis, this was great. Thank you so much. I can't wait to dive into the book. I wasn't super keen on reading books in college, but I promise I'll read this one.
Good stuff. Well, I hope you do, and I hope you enjoy it. And I hope that your listeners will take a look. The book is entitled "The Football Game That Changed America: How the NFL Created a National Holiday." And all you'd have to do is go to Amazon and either type in "The Football Game" or type in Denninger, which is Deninger, and you probably have a graphic somewhere that says that, and you'll find the book. So it's available now, and the publication date is early September. So all you football fans out there, check it out, and I hope you'll enjoy it.
Pre-order the book. It's the easiest way to do it. Dennis Denninger, everybody. Thank you, Professor.
A great pleasure. Thank you. Good to see you, Craig.
You too, always.
Cheers.
All right, that's the chat with my former professor. I didn't think I'd ever have the chance to have a former professor on the show, Anthony. But he wrote a book, and I can't wait to read it. He's sending one my way. When I'm done with it, do you want it?
Sure.
Great.
I would definitely take it. And actually, I have a fun fact.
Yes.
So, just like you, I had Denninger as well.
Yes.
And it actually was the 4th semester. I have my, I guess, memory off a little bit.
Yeah.
But guess who came to Syracuse when I was there and who brought him?
You're going to have to
There's
be
a broadcast. All right, he's a broadcaster.
Okay.
Denninger
brought him.
He's a Syracuse grad. Denninger
doesn't narrow it down. Tirico, Ian Eagle, Sean McDonough.
He brought Mike Tirico to our class. That was the first time I got to shake his hand, and he actually told us all about what goes into prepping for a game and like what he typically does for like a regular season game, and then what he would do for like a playoff game and things of that nature. So it gave us good perspective on
Nice. That is the benefit. Is there's great broadcasters everywhere.
Yeah.
That calling all the games, doing all the big stuff, that are alums that are willing to go back. And I'm just waiting for our call, Anthony.
I was about to say,
when do we get called in to go speak to the youths at Syracuse and educate them about radio and talk radio? Because we're clearly doing it right, baby. There's no other way to do radio than this show.
No other way.
By the way, speaking of Orange friends, I was talking with Noah Eagle earlier. You're literally eating. Anthony is eating. Is that clementine?
I call them clementine. Some people think all oranges are oranges.
I mean, it's an orange family fruit.
Yeah.
Right now, there's tangerine and clementine.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. I don't know what you got there. But I was talking to Noah Eagle about coming on the show, and I think we're going to do something this weekend that we'll have for everybody next week, because we can't have Noah live next week because he leaves for Brazil on Monday, because he's calling the Eagles-Packers game in Brazil. So we're going to talk to Noah about his summer with Dwayne Wade and LaChina Robinson calling both men's and women's basketball at the Olympics, and then preparing for Big Ten football this year, and then the NFL game on Peacock next Friday. So Noah Eagle next week here on the show. Again, if you want more on Denninger's book and our chat, there's a full 45-minute podcast-length interview in the Hoffman Show podcast feed. It's labeled like bonus exclusive, so it's easy to find if you scroll down a little bit. Also, it's online, youtube.com/@CraigHoffman. And you can go check out the full thing there and check out the book, The Football Game That Changed America, wherever books are sold. When we get back, it's back. Never read the comments time on the Team 980. Coming up at 6 o'clock, we will dive into the biggest Commander storylines of the day. We heard from a lot of key Commanders today. Assistant GM Lance Newmark held a press conference. Dan Quinn had a press conference and was on with B. Mitch and Finley. Adam Peters was on with Grant and Danny across the hall, so we got some of that for you. Plus, Jayden Daniels spoke. I'm tired just saying all that. So we'll have the best of the sound of the day for you coming up at 6 o'clock as the Commanders are getting closer and closer to the start of their season. Actually, it's Thursday, Anthony, which means 1 week from tonight, the NFL season starts.
I can't wait, man.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped. Next week's a short week for us because Labor Day, Monday, we're off. When do we want to make predictions? Are we going to do that on Thursday, like our season-long predictions?
Yeah, I think we should do it on Thursday.
Okay, so we'll do that on Thursday, going into Thursday Night Football that night, the season opener. We are going to do our fantasy draft next Wednesday at noon. We filled up the league yesterday. I was like, hey, I will sacrifice my evening to do a fantasy draft at 8 p.m. if everybody else needs to do that. And apparently we filled the league with a bunch of dudes who don't have regular jobs that keep them busy from 9 to 5. Literally every email response that I got to our league so far, Anthony, was, yeah, I'd prefer the midday. So noon next Wednesday, Hoffman Show Fantasy League Draft. We will live stream it on my YouTube page at Craig Hoffman.
Are we not doing it during the show?
No, we're not doing it during. We can't do a fantasy draft during the show. We have to do the show.
Didn't we do one?
Yeah, but that's because we had to. Last year, on Thursday, the day the season started, we didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And I wound up auto-drafting half my team because I had to host the show.
Okay, so you want to take it serious this year, and you want to hopefully win.
Yeah, I damn near won anyway.
You know who won it? I think, did I win the first year?
I think you won the first year. I think, did you win or did you have the best regular season?
I think I won the first year, and I lost last year.
In the championship game. Yeah, I had a late surge last year, but it was too little too late.
Yeah, I don't know who I played in the champ. They destroyed me.
Yeah, sometimes it be like that.
Yeah.
I also already adjusted the draft settings. Last year was painful because it was 90 seconds per pick. I already put it down to 60. And if folks want it, I'll put it at 30.
After the first round, maybe like 45.
I don't think I can do that. It's a drop-down menu, Anthony.
It's 30, 60, 90?
Yeah, there's not customizable settings.
For some reason, and why do I think we have 45 seconds? I don't know.
It's 30, 60, or 90.
Okay.
So we can... People can send their feedback on what they want it to be. But yeah, it'll be fun. We'll be live streaming it. One guy's going to be drafting from a pub in England, Anthony. Our guy Morgan.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
He's excited then.
Yeah. Very excited. Okay. Let's do it. Let's dive into the deepest, darkest part of the internet. YouTube comments.
We tried to warn them. They didn't listen. Every week, the Hoffman Show goes into the belly of the beast.
We read those comments, baby.
Never read the comments.
All right, let's do it. This is how this works. Our show streams live on YouTube every single day at the Team 980. And then we take all that video content, we chop it up into the segments, and we post them up on YouTube for you to watch nice and organized on demand at the Team 980 and at Craig Hoffman. You can subscribe to either place, and you will get the highlights of this here show. Of course, we spent a lot of time talking about the Commanders, and today's pretty much, except for one other topic, a Commanders never read the comments. But what you do is you leave your comments on the on-demand content. We read through them, and we pick some of the ones we want to respond to, and then we do this segment here called Never Read the Comments because we believe in irony. Okay, on the Commanders and the expectations for the season, Dave says, we are the ultimate if team. We have new ownership, new coaching, new system, rookie quarterback, and 40% player turnover. I actually think it's higher than that. I think it's like 60% player turnover. We could win 10 games. We could win 4. Nobody really knows what this team will be. In preseason, the starting defense is yet to play a snap together. Same with the starting O-line. Anthony, I was listening to Robert Mays and Derek Klassen on the Athletic Football Show, and they were doing their NFC East preview. And Robert said something that I actually really appreciated, and it was like a good gut check on the Commanders. and he says, this feels like a lot of August ideas with this team. It's like, oh, we'll move Jamin Davis to edge. Oh, we're going to try this guy here. Oh, we think we're going to do that. And it feels like there is a lot of what ifs. Now, a lot of them could work. I don't think these are crazy ideas, and they have put in the work to make them work. That's really important, right? When you take a gamble on a player from a development standpoint, you have control on some level of whether or not it works. If you're good at developing players, much better chance it works. But I definitely do think that there is an enormous range of what this team could be this year, anywhere from like a 5-win team, which I don't predict, to a 10-win team, which I also don't predict, or they could finish anywhere in the middle.
I mean, I think that's why this year sort of kind of they position ourselves to like contend or compete if it does work out. But at the same token, you know, they're hoping to just build off of this year and allow it to be a developmental year. So if Jamin Davis, you know, doesn't work out at DN, like,
okay,
right,
he's
exactly.
a free agent. See ya.
Exactly. So I think that's more so like what they're like working with.
It's one thing that I really like how they structure this is a lot of their experiments are easily move-onable from. Jamin's in the last year. Some of the other guys that they're going to try to give bigger roles, like if it doesn't work out, they'll just move on after the year. There's not a lot of contractual ties. And even, frankly, some of the veterans, if Bobby Wagner, all of a sudden it's like, oh, dang, he finally hit the cliff. That sucks. Then they'll move on. If he turns out to be London Fletcher 2.0, then sweet. Bobby will be here for 4 years, and he'll consider, well, he'll probably still be a Seahawk when he goes to the Hall of Fame, but you get the point. In response to Trey Wingo on with us yesterday, Trey making a very light case that the Commanders could go worst to first. More of like he likes them relative to expectations, where he feels like the Eagles and the Cowboys could certainly be set up to fail, and the Giants are going to stink. Nick Arnold, 35-25, says, this team has absolutely no chance at all of going worst to first. The roster is worse than last year in some very important ways, namely the offensive line and cornerbacks as well as pass rushers. Now, I say this strictly by what is on paper. As some of these rookies and one-year contract guys show out, we could get 8 or 9 wins. We are more than likely picking our left tackle in the top 5 next year. Anthony, I just don't get how someone looks at this roster and thinks it's worse than last year. Like, you lost Kendall Fuller. Okay, fine. They were the worst coached cornerback unit in the league. Hopefully the coaching itself makes it better. And it's not like Kendall was awesome last year. Like, Kendall was good. Maybe the talent's a little bit worse, but like if Sainer still is as good as Fuller was last year, then and Forbes is a better version in year 2 and BSJ is better, then you've gotten better. Like, the bar is so low there. And offensive line, like, one, the personnel is better this year. I don't know what they were doing at left guard last year. Now it's Nick Allegretti, who's not a world beater, but is better than what they had. Center, mega upgrade from Nick Gates to Tyler Biotish. And left tackle, like Charles Leno, okay, that's a downgrade potentially to Brandon Coleman, but we don't actually know yet. But the bigger thing on the offensive line is schematically and, like, conceptually, they're going to be so much better because they're not going to 5-step, 7-step drop 35 times a game. I'm just so sick of people saying that, and I can't wait for the season to start. If for no other reason, then we don't have to talk about last year anymore and say it's just some of the people who clearly didn't pay enough attention.
I think the fact that we have a much better quarterback, I think that should suggest that we are at least margin or slightly better than last year's team, without even looking at the rest of the team, because I think everything starts with the quarterback, and we've seen what Jayden Daniels has been, so far, and we're looking forward to the season for it. I don't know how we're worse. Worse is crazy.
Worse on paper than that unit that lost 4 games or that won 4 games, and then they shipped out like 70 of those dudes, even though there's only 53 here. One of the most viral calls that we've had in a long, long time, Anthony, our guy Shane last week, who on the day of the Jahan Dotson trade, I found out later through the comments, not only called this show and went on just to lost his mind. Rio Robinson, who's another Commanders YouTube creator, commented, and he just goes, "That was embarrassing. He's not one of us." So cue Kendrick. But he called B. Mitch and Finley. He called Russell. I think he called G&D. He called literally every show and went on the same unhinged rant about Jahan Dotson. Calling a bunch of people bums. That guy.
Maybe that's his friend, his cousin.
Maybe.
I don't know.
STNF2LC says, I'm not going to lie, the Dotson one is true. Our fan base is acting like dude is trash because he had an off year last year. Everyone on the squad did. That was in all caps. Nobody balled out last year at all. Dude was a great piece for this rookie quarterback. I'm still excited, though, and do see the path. I just don't understand it unless we get Higgins or Ayuk, and that likely isn't going to happen. STNF2LC and Shane. Why y'all pretending like they don't have the entire spring and almost the entirety of training camp to judge this off of? They didn't just look at tape from last year and be like, this guy sucks. They were with him every single day, and they were like, this is not going to work. They were going to put him in the slot because he couldn't do it on what they wanted on the outside. And as a slot receiver, they didn't see a whole lot of upside compared to, say, Luke McCaffrey or whatever else they can get out of Jamison Crowder. And it's like, okay, if he's not a long-term fit for us, then we're looking for short-term. Then a guy like Crowder can do everything that Jahan could do that we would have asked of him, and maybe some of it better. They're different players. Jahan's got better long speed. Crowder might be quicker and certainly has a better understanding of how to operate in the small spaces inside because he's been playing in the slot his entire career. And then a guy like Luke, they want to make sure they have the reps and the opportunities for. And so they traded him. And, like, it's not that hard to figure out. But you have to get over the fact that he's not the guy that you thought he was going to be as a rookie, or at the very least, he wasn't going to be here. And then you have people on the other side of the equation, Anthony, that say, at Python Delova, says, this is the problem with our fan base. They are prisoners of the past regime. Jahan Dotson was not that guy. This is a stupid take. This was one of those videos that was just fun to watch the comments roll in, Anthony. You had some people that agreed, a lot of people that disagreed, and let's just say I'm proud at how many people were willing to stand up and be like, that dude, no, that was weird. That was embarrassing.
Yeah.
The fans are learning to police themselves.
That's good.
This is the community. Yeah, this is the community I wanted to create. There was a thread today. Actually, we're going to get to it here in a second. Of fans just, actually, it's next. And then you had people who were just, by the way, there for on Shane's call for the entertainment. At Magnus Richards says, I'm weak, hope he's wrong, but that was hella funny. And that is actually the correct response. Just here for the entertainment. It's only entertainment, Anthony. Yesterday, we had Adam Peters and Dan Quinn talking about the roster moves, the Noah Brown news, all that kind of stuff in our Pick 6. And we got this comment from Brandon. Brandon Crittenden, 3939. Dude, we need guys that can cover A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors, CB1s. And Anthony, you want to talk about the commenters, the listeners, the fans policing themselves? You ready for this?
Uh-oh, here we go.
First response, Andrew Vargas, 2473. Okay, cool. Can you tell us which CB1 that is capable of covering A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, CeeDee Lamb, and Malik Neighbors that another team cut we can pick up on the waiver wire? I'm dying to know. Same.
I'm curious as well.
Same. Eric Hoffman, no relation, different spelling. 6665 says, old man yells at cloud. Comment. Glenn Smith, 491. Show me a cornerback that can consistently cover those guys, period. There's a reason that Brown and Lamb are so much better than average, and Neighbors is likely to be at least above average. And then to top it off, typically we don't use user blah, 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 blah comments, but user OY1SQ9IO5X on 212 said, worst comment award goes to Brandon. Anthony, I feel like a proud papa.
Wow.
I eventually commented on this thread and just went, I guess y'all handled this one, huh?
Yeah, clearly. Brandon? Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Yeah. Team gets better in March and April. It's August. Sorry. Now it's time. Hold on to your butts time, everybody. Catch the ride of the NFL season. We went live amidst roster cuts yesterday, or actually on waiver wire and practice squad stuff yesterday. And turned out that the Noah Brown stuff started to pop around that time as well. And Mr. Swervon, frequent commenter, said, are we making Noah Brown out to be something he's not? Before last season, nobody would ever even mention his name. He had one very good game. You'd be bringing in mid to compete with mid. And I appreciate this comment because it gives me the opportunity to say that for a select group of people, the answer is yes. You are making Noah Brown out to be something that he's not. People like things that are new, and Noah Brown is new. People like the idea of improving, and Noah Brown is an improvement. But let's be realistic about how much improvement Noah Brown is. Like, he's a mid-level number 2 at absolute best, and is probably more realistically a 3 or a 4 on a great or in a great receiving core. This is a receiving core that we're going to find out how good some of these guys can be. Can De'Ami Brown be a legitimate 2 after being a 3rd-round pick a bunch of years ago? Did he finally turn the corner? Like, we're going to find out. Olamide Zaccheaus had 600 yards in Philly a couple years ago. Like, let's find out if he can regain that form. But there's a really good chance that these guys all kind of have one really good day and some inconsistency, and it's an up and down type of year, and the second leading receiver on this team behind Terry is probably going to be Zach Ertz. And so for Noah Brown, I feel like there is a super engaged online Commanders fan that follows every bit of news from around the league, follows every single creator that's like, we got to go get Noah Brown. We got to go get Noah Brown. I can't believe the Texans cut Noah Brown. Yeah, Noah Brown. And I'm like, I hear you. I'm happy that they got Noah Brown compared to not getting Noah Brown, but that is very different than Noah Brown is the savior at receiver and some of the kind of over enthusiasm that I think folks are having, Anthony, for Noah Brown. I just don't want to put that on Noah Brown,
Yeah, and I feel like fans just wanted us to be active in the wire, to be honest, or just acquire a free agent, and Noah Brown was probably the best receiver out there. So
for sure, hey, they got the best guy who was out there.
Yeah,
that's good. That's better than nothing.
I just don't think that will necessarily move the needle in terms of success for our team.
But they want to find out, like, Noah Brown, unlike Brandon Ayuk or T. Higgins, doesn't cost you anything.
Yep.
So that's why they go at that route. And last but not least on the Commanders, I think our roster, this is actually a point you made a little bit earlier, Anthony. I wish I'd lumped this comment back up earlier in the segment. I think our roster is a little underrated based on and this is from Dave NDC 9221. I think our roster is being a little underrated based on our QB potential. Offensive line and corner room are so weak, it is clouding a little bit of our season-long ability to win. We'll see on O-line, we'll see on corner, but I do think it's a good reminder that quarterback can elevate, and we'll see if Jayden can do that. But I think on a more important note, the kind of overrated, underrated, optimism is relative. Like, there are some people that are like, wow, man, they're going to be so great. They're going to win 10 games. Or they're drawing that based off of the enthusiasm that those of us that cover the team have for this group. I wouldn't misread that optimism as a lack of success. It's merely like, hey, this is good. They're going to be more competitive. They're not skipping steps. They're doing smart things, but there's just a reality of talent and lack of talent that we're going to have to deal with, and we're going to see play out at times. There's going to be games where guys are a step slow and guys don't make a catch, or a throw goes haywire because Jayden still is a rookie. And I'm just going to go, yeah, that's where they're at right now. So yes, optimism is relative. I'd rather be this team than some other teams that I think are on the way down, but that doesn't mean that for this season, this team is going to win more games than maybe a team like Philly that's running the razor's edge on a bunch of stuff and their coaching staff, or Dallas that is making some mind-scratching contract decisions, et cetera, et cetera. All right, the other big topic in the comments this week, Anthony, was when we dove into the Keith Lee DMV food tour.
Oh, man. Looking forward to this.
Luckily, these are all YouTube comments. Although, I will say, we made 2 TikToks out of it as well, as we divvy up the content and spread it everywhere. And people on the one where I talked about how much diversity there is in the DMV food scene, and that, that I wish that got more talk, and the talk about DC as a food town, that apparently got caught up in the right side of the algorithm. That wasn't in the hater side of the algorithm. That was people going, thank you. Like, this is a great point. This is the point, which is what I said. And I will say the comments on mostly are on our long form, like the people that listen to the full segment, the full 15 minutes of thoughtfulness we gave the topic, those comments were pretty great, Anthony. People were into it. There was like, hey, like, I appreciate the nuance that you have in talking about this, and that kind of understood that we weren't really actually going after Keith Lee. We were talking about the summaries that people were making off of his reviews. And then there were people that watched the shorts and the TikToks that wanted to murder us. So that wasn't great.
Oh, you know what would have been funny?
What's that?
If we pulled some comment from the shorts as well.
Oh, no, I did.
Oh.
I did.
Uh-oh.
Some of them are just funny. Like this one from I don't make the names, people. It's at Blood Farts. At Blood-Farts with a Z. I don't make it up. That's what it is. When did Keith Lee replace Zagat's? Like the rating service.
Wow.
That's funny. That's just good, funny stuff. Yeah. But then you had stuff like this. DC Community Carrot 9584. You're goofy. He eats at other spots. This was in response to your short, Anthony, about he needs to diversify his palate because a lot of the places that he went that he wasn't apparently happy about and wouldn't post his reviews publicly were soul food spots and wing spots.
Yep.
He goes, he eats at other spots. The visits are not only wings and soul food. How familiar are you with his visits? And I responded to a couple of these people on TikTok and a couple on YouTube just to say, like, hey, if you listen to the whole thing, our gripe isn't with Keith Lee. And we actually put that in the video. We're not mad at Keith Lee, although, hey, like, on that particular part of it, your research you could do a little better. But, like, the whole point of what we were saying is, don't let this be actually representative of the DC food scene. This is a representation of the places that he went and his opinion on them. But yeah, what Keith Lee does in visiting spots that need more attention or deserve maybe more attention and reviewing them, and then there's a huge bump in their business and he spends thousands of dollars, like, no beef with Keith Lee and spreading positivity. Like, that's awesome. Yabo Ali Zone 1 says, the people in DC were the ones who recommended the food places for him to try. Y'all just mad he wasn't feeling it. He claims to have done this is where I do have the one gripe with Keith Lee. He claims to have done research. The research wasn't very good based off of people with expertise. But then you have this, Anthony. At SBXD8GK says, in response to DC being a good food city, in fact, a great food city, no, it's not. Born and raised here, and the food scene is garbage. Why has he got to talk about his mama's cooking like that?
That's funny.
Born and raised here?
Oh,
and you think the food scene is garbage? Sounds like you ain't left the house. And you shouldn't talk about your mama's cooking like that on the internet.
There are too many holes in the walls that are, like, really good. Oh, my. White Castle, Yellow House. I can just name them.
Wait, like White Castle is in the chain?
No.
Okay, there's an actual local place named White Castle. Okay,
yeah.
I was about to say.
This is off Southern Ave. Off Southern Ave. Then you also got Yellow House on Minnesota Avenue. That was, man. But, you know, some people just got to get outside the house, Craig. That's all it is. That's all it is.
Got to get outside your house. Got to get outside your neighborhood. Got to get outside the district if you want to go full DMV. And Keith Lee did do some of that, including some trips in Northern Virginia. And last but not least, really quick, Anthony, because we're over time here. Remember caller Dontel a couple of weeks ago?
Dontel,
who was like, I'm a Commanders and a Ravens fan.
Oh, yep.
Well, we put up that video and asked whether that was allowed. And let's just say the answer was violently no. Summed up most succinctly by at Gibbs Old School. My father always says there was never such a thing as a stupid question. Until now. Hell no, you can't be a fan of both teams. The people have spoken, Anthony.
Yes, they have. That's a hell of a response.
They spoke loudly. You know who else spoke today? Adam Peters on Grant and Danny. You know who else spoke today? His assistant GM, Lance Newmark, to a group of reporters in Ashburn. Dan Quinn, Jayden Daniels. We got all the sound for you. Top headlines of the day for the Commanders next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 6:30, Logan Paulson's thoughts on Noah Brown and the wide receiver room for the Commanders. But it is 6 o'clock, actually. It's 6:05. Ooh, shoot, we better get going. It is time for a pick six. Is that you, or is that me? You need me to play it today?
See, one time you played it, I used to play it.
Yeah, I played it yesterday because I sprung it on you and you didn't know that we were going to do it.
Okay, I mean, I can play it if you want me to.
Yeah, well, the question is, do you still need your computers? This is the kind of stuff that we should work out in commercial breaks, but we're a professional radio show that enjoys occasionally being incredibly transparent with the audience. Do you need to still have your computers to cut stuff, or can you play it? Like, I would rather play the bites and have you play the intro, but if that's not going to work because you need your computers to cut the bites, then I can play the intro.
So I can play the intro and you can play the bites.
Play the intro!
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
Championship radio show. That's what we are over here. Don't let anybody tell you differently.
Number 1.
All right. Today on Grant and Danny, Adam Peters had a visit and answered a whole bunch of questions, including one about the cornerback position. This is an interesting spot on this roster. They went with just 5. They brought in a couple of guys on practice squad, including Bobby Price, Norfolk State kid, 6'3", so huge size. That's a bit of a developmental project for them. But I think one of the big questions, too, is, like, what do they see in Sainer still? Is he just playing the nickel? Is he playing outside? Like, who are the starters here? So Peters today with G&D on the cornerback position.
You know, internally we feel a little bit better than maybe externally, and that's the case most of the time. We see these guys play day in and day out, and you go down the roster and in the depth chart, and all of these guys have gotten better. When you're talking about the secondary, really, Emmanuel Forbes has gotten significantly better, and that's a testament to how he's practiced, how he's worked, and how he's been coached. Jason Simmons is an excellent coach. Joe Witt, those guys have really gotten him to improve quite a bit, and he's done the work too. He's made a bunch of plays in the last few practices. So, you know, and then Mikey Sainer still has been awesome inside at the nickel, and he can play some outside too. And St. Juste is long, athletic, and has made a lot of plays on the ball this camp as well. So, it remains to be seen how we do on the field, but very confident in all those guys and the coaching staff putting them in the right place to succeed.
I think the confidence in the Forbes answer is kind of a big deal, because this was a team that I think was a group that was a little frustrated with him early on. It's like, dang, he really is not doing the stuff that we need to. Like, is he going to put on the weight? Is he working hard enough in the weight room? And something clicked at some point. Like, he got on board, and off he went. And he played a lot better down the stretch of camp. And that, to me, sounds like a GM that's confident that not only that they have a competent guy at that position, but they could have someone good at that position. And that maybe he does really fit. And those ball skills that he showed in the SEC at Mississippi State can shine for Joe Witt Jr. And that is something that I think we need to point out. Joe Witt Jr., along with Dan Quinn and some of the other guys that they had in Dallas, got great production out of later draft picks and unheralded players. Last year, Deron Bland set an NFL record for pick sixes in a year where he wasn't even supposed to play. It wasn't until Trayvon Diggs, who they also got a lot more out of than people anticipated the year prior, got hurt. And that's when Bland got in there. So they understand how to coach that position, and they are working with a bunch of guys who previously, for the ones that were here, did not play for people who understood the position at the NFL level. It was one of the worst coached position groups I've ever seen covering the league. And so they have to count on some level on internal improvement. They're giving time for that to happen. And I bet you they also think that not only is Emmanuel Forbes better than he was when they got him, but he's going to get a lot better, that this growth trajectory will continue because he understands how to work now. He understands what they want, and it's just going to continue to grow. And so really cool stuff to hear from Adam Peters there for a guy who's normally pretty coy, kind of showing some enthusiasm about, by the way, one of the 2 picks he kept from last year's draft, for all the talk that they hate every one of Ron Rivera's draft picks, which is not true. They just liked other guys better.
Number 2.
Brandon Coleman is a guy that they really need to play well this year. And Cornelius Lucas is a fine stopgap at left tackle, but realistically, he just doesn't move well enough to do the things that they want to do offensively to maximize their offense. And if they have to limit their offense because they can't get as on the edge on the left side as they want to, then okay, that's a reality they're going to have to live with if Coleman can't hold up. But number one, and even getting him out there before you make any kind of skill determination, is getting him healthy, getting him to the point that he can play. And he was back on the practice field in some capacity today. Here's Dan Quinn on the guy that he hopes will start at left tackle, his 3rd-round pick, Brandon Coleman.
Yeah, I spent just a moment with him after practice because he, was able to do quite a bit yesterday, and then today padded to go. So he was good. I asked him if anything was guarded. He said, "No, man, I'm good to go." He felt strong. He felt good. So I'm pleased that we're leaving the camp spot, in good health, and that's the goal that you want as the coach and Adam and I to say. You leave training camp, with a healthy team. We were, certainly disappointed that Jordan, was injured, but he's going to be back, and no one else is into that space. So that's exciting, Nikki, because that's not the easiest thing to do. You're trying to be tough. You're trying to establish that it's this razor-thin line to make sure that the team's healthy, and you also have to put in work. You have to build some resilience, and so that's the fine line that you go with. And I'm just constantly looking at the team, where they're at. There was a few days I pushed a little more. A couple days I, might have turned the dial back without them knowing. But they deserve this break, too, to reset, and we'll come out flying.
That is the hardest part of this time of year, is you got to do enough to be ready without doing too much that you put your guys at risk. And that is a really significant challenge. And sometimes, as a guy we'll talk about in a minute, you have a guy that comes in hurt and you're just trying to manage him and get him right. And that's an even more difficult balance of like, how do I have this guy that's not up to the level of everyone else work in the right amount to get to that level while also being able to compete while that's happening. Meanwhile, sometimes you are doing everything right and a guy, it's football, like stuff happens. And that's what happened with Brandon Coleman. The other guy I'm talking about,
Number 3,
is, of course, Johnny Newton, the 2nd-round pick for the Commanders, who also has been battling injury, but they are counting on to be ready for the regular season.
Johnny's doing good. That's okay. I like it. Today's kind of fun. The part for Johnny, he's the change of direction, the speed is good. I think you'll probably see him back into these practice reps coming up beginning into next week. And then we'll have a better estimation if he's ready to play, depending on how much practice he gets in. He's chomping at the bit, much like Coleman was. Coleman was just a little further along, different injury, obviously, but it's not far. And I'm excited to get him back into the mix. He's definitely wanting to do that. We're just not going to miss a step with him.
He's super important to what they want to do long term is a rotational piece, and obviously is a potential replacement eventually for John Allen and Deron Payne, depending on how things go, contracts, et cetera. But when they traded John Ridgeway, like, now you're at a point where you kind of need that dude. They did sign a couple of guys back to the practice squad who could buy you a week. We were doing Take Command this morning. I mentioned a guy in Nuisi, who is the international pathway player that they kept on the practice squad. And Logan was like, I'm so glad you mentioned him. He was actually great in camp. And like, he flashed, and I didn't realize that he was on the practice squad. Like, I'm excited about that. And sometimes I catch Logan by surprise with information, and it's actually really fun because he gets really into it. And that was one of those where he was just super enthusiastic authentically about this guy that has a great story, obviously, being a part of the pathway program, coming from overseas, but can really play and might be able to play for them right away. So if you need to buy a week for Newton, like he's an option. They also signed 30-year-old Charles Watkins, I believe is the name, if I'm having that correct, who's a defensive end listed, or Carlos Watkins, that's who it is, listed as a defensive end, but he's 6'3", 305. Like that's a dude that can play some three technique if you need to, based off that. And so he played for DQ in Dallas a couple years ago. Again, older player, 30 years old. So they've got a couple of options behind John, Duran, Big Phil if Newton's not ready. But clearly, I think with the Ridgeway trade, like they could have traded Ridge in week 2, week 3, potentially, if they wanted to, or maybe at the deadline. But they did it now because they're clearly counting on Newton to be available.
Number 4.
All right, fourth up in our pick 6 as we get to the top stories of the day. This was in some ways the biggest story of yesterday, but everyone getting the chance to talk about it today. Noah Brown in the fold, officially signed this morning, practiced this afternoon. He's wearing number 85. He's big, he's tall, he's fast, he's strong. What else does he bring, Dan Quinn?
The first thing I think about with Noah, this is a dog-ass competitor. Like, he is a really physical player. You know, he's got a great background both as a receiver on teams. He's a fantastic teammate. And so when we had the ability to add him to this group, it was a very easy decision from the coaching side. And, you know, Adam had, you know, certainly scouted him and knew him. And so he brings a lot to our team. So I'm excited for everybody to get to know him and be around him. He and Terry were actually part of the same recruiting class at Ohio State. I knew they had played together, but I know they had come in together. No surprise that these are two really class act professionals that they would have been hanging around years back.
Not a surprise at all, and that's great. I think it's really important, not essential, not like you can get around it or you can't get around it, but it's really important, or it can be really helpful. That's probably a better phrasing. It can be really helpful to have a familiar face when you come in now, where like you have someone who you don't have to build the relationship and learn the playbook. He can go to Terry's house, I'm sure at this point, with the contracts Terry signs, and as long as he's been here, Terry's got a very, very nice house. And they can sit there and watch film and learn the playbook. And, you know, it's not like you're texting a stranger to be like, hey, I got a question here. So that's great. Oh, and by the way, the quarterback is very excited to also help out. Apparently, he told, did Jayden Daniels today, Dan Quinn said that, like, he asked if he could go help. And like, am I allowed to take extra reps to go work with Noah Brown? Here's Jayden talking about developing that new relationship after practice today.
I mean, he's new. I had a whole training camp with the other guys, and, you know, he just came, so just talking through stuff and trying to get up to speed as quickly as possible.
Simple enough on that. I love that Jayden thinks that is his responsibility, because often those things fall at the feet of like a Sam Hartman, where it's like, okay, I'm the fourth quarterback. This guy wants to run extra routes. I'll go be the arm. Jayden is like, this dude's going to play. I need to have a rapport with him. He needs to be on top of it. He needs to know not just what it is in the playbook, but how I want it done. Let's get it done. The fact that he sees that as a responsibility speaks extraordinarily well to Jayden Daniels and will certainly help Noah Brown.
Number 5.
All right. The other guy that spoke today that we haven't heard from is Lance Newmark, who is the assistant general manager. Of course, we heard from Peters yesterday, Newmark today, and Lance spoke about some of the work that's gone on to building this roster, the work that's gone into building this roster, starting back in March when he and Adam really got started at the start of the league year.
Well, it's been a very active 5 or 6 months, whatever it's been. Every day we've come in here with the attitude of trying to get this better, to make this team as competitive as it can be right away, while also trying to build a team that's going to be competitive for the long haul. So every day we just try to find ways to get better, try to find ways to improve our roster, improve our process, whether it's free agency, whether it's the draft, whether it's workouts, whether it's going back on guys that have been hurt. We try to look under every rock and find every opportunity to improve, and we're trying to do that as fast as we can.
One thing that's caught my ear from Newmark and another answer that he gave today and Peters yesterday is they both let slip / said / how I don't know whether they're trying to be overprotective and just let it out or what happened. The point is, they both said out loud into microphones at press conferences, yeah, we did a little bit more than we thought we'd be able to. Like, they surpassed their expectations of what they thought they could accomplish in year one. I don't know what that means in wins on the field, but it certainly is something that caught my ear, and I'm hoping quickly they're proven correct, because I would like to watch a good football team this year, as all of you would. And, maybe they thought, oh, man, we got a 4-win team. We're going to have to gut this roster. Like, damn. And then they realized how much they were going to have to gut the roster, and they're like, there's no way we can refill it with quality. There's too many holes. And we're going to maybe win a 5 or 6 win team just because we're in year one. And we got to turn it all over. And we're going to have a rookie quarterback. And it seems like they now think that they can be a lot more competitive this year. We'll see, because there still seems to me to be, it's not even a talent dearth. They just don't have a lot of high-end talent. They don't have a lot of blue chippers on the roster, which makes it really hard to win football games. You have to be really, really perfect in a lot of areas, as opposed to letting talent just make a play and overcome something else. But maybe they're set up to be just a really solid, excellent football team. Last but not least,
number 6.
This was something that was interesting. Dan Quinn talking about how they're going to do captains in 2024.
We'll be using game captains. And I'll also utilize a group of some leaders that will be kind of with me on some decisions that or emphasis that I want to make with the team. But we'll pick game captains until the postseason, and then we'll pick postseason captains that'll be throughout.
So when you say game captains, each game a different guy will wear the C on his chest?
They won't wear it, but they'll be a captain.
No C's on the chest. That's pretty fascinating. And, obviously Terry's had the C on his chest for a while. I'd imagine he's in that group of leaders. John Allen had that C for a while. But it's just another kind of thing to compete for, right? Like, whether you're earning that captaincy by how you practice, whether it's something as a chance to connect, because, hey, we're playing you're playing the Colts a couple years ago. Hey, it's Terry's hometown team. You're playing whoever. You're playing the Seahawks. It's like, hey, Bobby's going to be our captain this week because of his history there. Like, it's a chance to tell stories about some of these players and doing the game captains thing, or a chance to highlight a guy who's doing the right stuff week in, week out. So that's actually really cool, and I kind of dig it. Leadership isn't about having a C on your chest that got sewn on by the equipment staff. Leadership is about what you do, and it's very clear, I think, within that locker room to the coaches and to the other players who the leaders are. And I'd imagine Dan will consult those players, and there won't be a whole lot of griping about who is and isn't in that group. I'd imagine a guy like Mariota, Eckler, Ertz, like those guys, Wagner, are all going to be in there. And then maybe some younger guys. Maybe Jayden is in that group. Maybe Frankie Louvu is kind of, one of the stars, hopefully, for this team is in that group and the intensity he brings. So I'm not exactly sure. Obviously, I just heard that as you did, and there wasn't any more that I've heard that you didn't on that. But I think it could be a really cool opportunity for Dan to do some of the stuff that he feels is really important, which is highlight competition and highlight the connection that they want to make as a team, as opposed to just saying, Terry and John, C. Marcus, C. Jayden, congrats, rookie quarterback, C. Good way to do it, if you ask me. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we give you the biggest Commander storylines on the day and the best sound every single day at 6 p.m. We call it our Pick 6. When we get back, more on Noah Brown and what his addition means to the Commanders receiver room and why he is such a good fit here in D.C. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And coming up in, well, about 15 minutes, if you bought a Tressway 5 jersey and you're like, dang, 5 is now Jayden Daniels. That's cool, but what do I do with my jersey? Do I keep it? Maybe I want to get the new one. Tress has announced that he has officially switched to 10. The 10 is going to stick. And you got to hear what he's doing for he and Jayden actually both are combining to do for folks who want to exchange their jerseys. That's going to be a part of Real Things Real People Said in Real Microphones coming up at 6:50 today. But right now, some thoughts from one of their new teammates. In fact, on one of their new teammates. In fact, their newest teammate. You got Noah Brown in town to round out the Commanders wide receiver room. And this morning on Take Command, Logan and I talked about how that room came together. Anthony, do you have it over there? You're ready to hit play? You were your body language is so casual right now. I didn't know if you weren't like, I'm ready. So I started panicking like I was going to have to hit the button. Anyway, here's Logan and I being smarter than what I just was.
It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulson and former Commanders beat reporter.
That's not the right one, Anthony. I should have just hit the button. Here's Logan and I being more intelligent than the last 45 seconds of this professional radio show. The moment that everyone's been waiting for, Logan. Let's talk about the wide receiver room. And everyone's so psyched about this because they make a move after they name the 53, and that is to sign Noah Brown. Of course, the 6 that ultimately make it are Terry McLaurin, De'Ami Brown, Luke McCaffrey, Olamide Zaccheaus, Jameson Crowder, and Byron Pringle, which we kind of thought would be the case. That was actually the prediction that we made on the radio show, was those 6, with Pringle being the guy that just kind of stood out, having done enough, and the veteran savvy and the kick returner and the whole deal. They also keep Mitchell Tinsley and Bryson Tremaine on practice squad, which is interesting. 2 of the guys that are from last year's crop, or Tinsley's case 2 years ago. But guys that have been here that, Tinsley had a really nice game the other night. We've talked about Tremaine quite a bit, but I'm kind of surprised that there's no Rosemy Jackson and some of the other young guys who played pretty well. And there's just a level of evenness amongst that group. I thought they might lean towards some of the guys they bring in. And then, of course, Noah Brown. Let's talk about Brown separately in a second because I have a specific question for you on him. Yeah. But the 6 that they keep, how does that set up to support Jayden Daniels in year 1?
Yeah, I mean, I think the moving of Jahan showed a vision for the room that they want tough, competitive, smart dudes. And I understand that that's kind of the roster theme, but go down the list, man. Terry, tough, competitive, smart. OZ, tough, competitive, smart. Luke, every single one of those dudes is not afraid to block. They play with tremendous urgency. They are where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there in route concepts. So to me, it's a very solid group. I know fans are probably like, oh, there's no true 2. We need to get more talented. And I'm not disputing that. But I do think that when you look at this group, they will definitely play better than the sum of their parts on paper. They are just football players. There's a consistency and a toughness to that group that you very rarely see in receiver rooms. And I love that because, again, part of it is from 2010 to 2012 when Kai was here. I played with Josh Morgan. I played with Pierre Garçon, dudes who would absolutely kill you if they had the opportunity in the run game and the pass game. They were absolute savages. So I really appreciate that type of play stylistically because there's going to be 3 of those dudes on the field at one time. Probably they're going to be 11 personnel. And talk about having a cultural identity for your team. You need receivers that are going to be the DBs are man, I wish I wasn't playing in this game right now. And I think that's what this group gives you. And I also love that they kept the 2 guys on the back end of the roster on practice squad. Bryson Tremaine plays exactly that way. Mitchell Tinsley plays exactly that way. And so it's 7-8 guys that is what they do. And I think, again, I understand there's a lack of talent, but I look at the tight end room with Zach Ertz, and we've talked about this before. He's going to get a huge share of targets. So to me, it's Terry, Zach, and then you kind of intermingle your De'Ami Brown, your OZ, your Luke McCaffrey in the situation that best suits them. And I think you're going to have a pretty solid group here.
Yeah, I thought Adam was really sharp in pointing out yesterday that you don't really improve your team in August. Like you improve your team in March and April. Yeah. And they entered March and April with the idea that Jahan Dotson was going to regain form as a former number one, or first round draft pick. And it didn't work out. And there's only so much backup planning you can do for that kind of stuff. And so they ultimately made the decision to move on from Jahan based off of what they saw, which is a totally valid decision based off what we saw. And there's just not a lot you can do at that point to try to get a number 2 receiver in, because those guys aren't available because they're on teams. That said, Noah Brown might come in and as soon as he can learn the offense and everything, elevate to that. Different body type, different caliber of player than perhaps the production certainly of these other guys. A guy that's had over 500 yards in the last 2 seasons in Dallas and then last year in Houston, averaged 17.2 a catch, 6'2", it's like 220, can run. Different kind of player. And Logan, the question I wanted to ask you more specifically is, what kind of challenge does he face to come in at this point of the year? We've talked about this before. When you left Washington, you went to Chicago, and it was like time to play because you got cut at the end of camp that year when your time in Burgundy and Gold came to an end, and had to learn an offense just in the same way that Noah Brown's going to have to learn this one. What kind of challenge does he face? And then ultimately, once he overcomes that challenge, what does he bring to the team?
Yeah, I think the one thing about the Cliff Kingsbury offense, at least so far, it seems like the guys pick it up really quick. I don't know if there's like not a lot of volume in, or the way he coaches it, or the verbiage makes it easier, but it does seem like, I would imagine, he'd have a relatively easy time picking it up, especially with guys who have been here. They can help bring him along, and I think they're going to be pretty invested in bringing him along. So I don't think it'll be too challenging. Maybe the quickest to be ready week 1. It's nice to have 2 weeks, kind of this pseudo bye week here with no game this weekend. It gives you more time to figure it out and learn it. So I do think he'll be fine. But if it's not this week, it's the following week. And in terms of role, like he's a really interesting guy. I went back and watched his last 5 games from last season, and obviously he didn't play in the last game of the last year because he was hurt. So that's another thing. He's kind of negotiating injury, back and shoulder and all this kind of stuff. But one thing that jumped out to me right away is he plays the way that this receiver room is going to be expected to play. Like, he's very, very physical. He's very urgent in the run game. Love to see that. He's got some suddenness as a route runner. He's got some good vertical speed. He reminds me of like a little bit more polished at the top of your route, De'Ami Brown kind of guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's tall, he runs fast. He's not the most consistent at the catch point, which was a little surprising given his body size. Like, he had a couple drops. Everybody's got drops, but just not super consistent at the catch point. So I think there's going to be some developmental stuff there. But can he help your team? Absolutely. He's a good football player. Absolutely. And I think when you compare him to a guy like Bryson Tremaine, I think the athlete is better. The vertical speed, the suddenness is better. And so that's why you probably make that move, is like he's got the size, but he also moves a little bit better for a guy that size. And like you said, he's been very productive. And you watch, I think it was a Cincinnati game last year. I mean, he had like 140 yards receiving or something like that. And again, those are schemed up touches. It's not like he's winning one-on-ones consistently, but you need guys like that in your offense. So to me, maybe Terry's the one. And then again, he kind of falls into, maybe De'Ami's the vertical guy. Maybe he's the comeback guy. Maybe, whatever. And I think you just kind of find a role for him. And I think he's a little bit more nuanced as a route runner, which is nice. It's a skill set that fits the room. It's a personality that seems to fit the room based on play style. So I think it's a nice addition. I just don't, if you're a fan, don't get crazy and carried away to say this is the number 2 guy. I think he's got I think he kind of falls in line with the rest of the guys, like with the OZs. And, OZ had a 600-yard receiving 2 years ago in Philly. Like, that's what he reminds me of, a guy that in the right situation can be very productive for your offense. Yeah,
I think the goal long-term is that he probably becomes the 2, but that could be a more long-term thing. Like, he's not going to step in week 1 and be the 2 for a number of reasons, including that shoulder, which he hasn't played in the preseason. Like, part of the reason he's available is because he was hurt and banged up and couldn't get on the field and prove that he belonged closer to the top of that Texans receiving room, which they obviously revamped in the offseason. So certainly, I think we're all hoping he can be on the field sooner rather than later. But it could be a couple weeks until he's really playing with a higher snap count. And then we'll see how he fits with Jayden not having the offseason, although Jayden seems to get along pretty quickly with pretty much everybody. But how that ultimately goes. That from Take Command. If you want much more on our entire roster breakdown, check it out. Straight into what's trending, though, to tell you that Brandon Ayuk got paid. 5-year deal with the San Francisco 49ers, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter. Numbers aren't out yet, but the Ayuk drama is finally over, and he is not going anywhere. Brandon Ayuk staying in San Francisco. He will be a 49er and contractually tied to the team for the next 5 seasons. Elsewhere in the world of what's trending, the Nationals are off tonight. They're actually back home tomorrow, taking on the Cubs. Of course, last night you had Dylan Cruz's first ever home run for the Nats. Mystics off until they face Connecticut this weekend. So that is a 3 o'clock tip on Saturday at ESA. Last night had their 3rd straight win. NBA news in the middle, or I guess we're not in the middle, at the end of August. Steph Curry signs a 1-year, $62.6 million extension. Yep, that's what I said. 1 year, $62.6 million tax on to the end of his deal. He'll be with the Warriors until he retires, and very well paid. He's got 3 or 4 years left on that deal. Now an extra $62.6 million. That's what's trending. I'm Craig Hoffman on the Team 980. Final few here on the Hoffman Show as we wrap things up on the Team 980, and of course always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Fresh episode to take command in your feed if you'd like to get more football in after we are done yapping. Tomorrow on the show, Nate Tice, who, Anthony, I didn't know this when I booked Nate. He didn't tell me. He didn't tip me off. This is just good fortune for us. I wonder if this is why he asked for Friday, though. Nate, in the offseason, switched from The Athletic to Yahoo and is a great content creator there. But he also just got announced today as a new contributor at the NFL Network.
Oh, so now you're making some moves then.
Yeah, so I'm excited. Nate's going to be on the show tomorrow.
Okay.
Who else is on the show tomorrow? We already have another guest. We have two. Oh, Standing. We'll see if Yates is on the show. Labor Day weekend might mess him up. But he promised he'd be back on the regular next week. He visited me in my home last week. So, that's good for 2 credits, if you will. Of course, tonight, North Dakota State, Colorado. So college football season getting underway. But Standig did his annual agent survey, which is always awesome. And he's going to join us tomorrow at 5 o'clock for Not My Beat. So pretty pumped for that. Nate tomorrow on the show as well. We got some other cool stuff planned on a Friday, as always. The breaking news that just came through moments ago.
Breaking news. Oh, snap. News is broken. Breaking news.
Brandon Ayuk staying in San Francisco. Anthony, are you emotional over this?
So, Craig, typically at the end of this show, you ask me what was my favorite part of the show. I can absolutely tell you what was my least favorite part of the show.
When you found out that Brandon Ayuk resigned?
Yes.
Did you have real hope that he was coming here?
All right, it might not have been real hope, but...
You had fake hope.
Yes. There were until he signed the dotted line, there was still a chance, even if it was the slimmest chance, a 0.0001% chance. It's still a chance, Greg. That's all I'm saying.
Sure.
Well, exactly. So that's my point. That's my least favorite part of the show, just because when I found out that he actually wasn't coming here, that really did hurt.
I mean, it wasn't his. Who hurt you? The answer is no one.
No one technically hurt me, man.
No one hurt you. He was under contract there. He was never coming. If they wanted him here, he would have been here by now. Adam Peters knows exactly who he is and would have made it happen. But they decided they would rather invest draft capital in players that they take in the draft with young rookie contracts and control and the whole deal versus sending at least second, if not first round pick. And apparently San Francisco wanted like a first and Terry. Like, get the hell out of here. Ayuk's great. He ain't that good.
Yeah, they're asking.
And they would have had to pay him $30 million a year here.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah. By the way,
No, I'm joking.
4 years, 128. 4 years, 120. 4 years, 120 is the numbers that Schefter ultimately reported. So Ayuk gets paid. It's not JJ money, which it shouldn't be. It's not CeeDee Lamb money, which it shouldn't be. It's good money. I mean, it's great money by any human standard, but it's excellent wide receiver money. He gets right on $30 million a year. The devil will be in the details. I'm curious how much the guarantees are. Like, good for Ayuk, good for the Niners. They better get Trent in there and then go win a Super Bowl. Like, you're good enough if you're San Francisco. I just hope that them messing. Players typically get relatively close to what they want anyway. I hate when it takes this long, and it's just like, if you're going to pay him $30 million, why didn't you do it 3 months ago? I don't understand how that works.
Do you think it's because it's incentive laden? You got to do all of this, and he probably okay.
Like, I bet you it's like $80 million guaranteed or something. Do we have that number yet?
It's 76 guaranteed.
There you go. So he gets $30 million a year in the first 2 years, and then that third year is mostly guaranteed. The fourth year is going to be completely not guaranteed. He'll still have a decent cap hit because they're going to pay him, whatever 76 divided by 4 is. You prorate the signing bonus. That's how the cap works. That's not the signing bonus. So whatever the signing bonus is, they'll prorate that. So I don't know what the bonus, the guaranteed at signing number is, but the signing bonus, not the number guaranteed at signing. But point is, like, they'll make the math work. Maybe there was some fuddling over the math, but clearly I think it was important to Ayuk to hit $30 million AAV. Like, they want that message that I'm a $30 million receiver, and they got it.
That's tough.
So good for them. We don't have time for real things, do we?
Now we do.
We do?
I don't know what's. So it's not BetQ. Oh,
We have
it is.
we have Terps Talk tonight.
Oh, that's what it is. We have Terps Talk.
Yeah,
And then
Locks is
BetMGM.
back. Sweet. We have time for real things. What do you know?
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
We'll see if we take it all the way, Anthony. We might not. Yeah, I would have at least a little buffer in there. Just, you know, radio producer talk there.
Yes, sir.
So Tressway today finalized that he is wearing number 10. It will be number 10 for him this season. Of course, he gave the number 5 to Jayden Daniels when he got drafted number 2 overall out of LSU. With a couple of things. There's an LSU-Oklahoma game. I think there's a private flight involved that Jayden's going to pay for. But they also want to do something for fans because a lot of folks, a surprisingly high number of folks, have Tressway jerseys. I don't say surprisingly because Tress is a punter. But Tress has been an awesome punter, and he's an even better dude. And so a lot of people were like, I'm getting a Tressway jersey, and I don't blame you. He's been the most consistent, excellent player on this team for a decade. So what do you do if you have a 5 Tressway jersey? Honestly, I would just keep it and wear it. I think it becomes even cooler because it's like, oh, cool, you got the quarterback, I got the punter. What's up? But if you want a 10 Tressway jersey, good news courtesy of Tressway.
A special announcement that you and Jayden have been working on.
Yes.
Want to share that with us?
Yeah, so part of the jersey exchange was that he had decided part of the deal was whenever I had announced my new number, he was going to partner with Fanatics and we were going to do a giveaway for a lot of the fans that already have Tressway 5 jerseys. Yeah. All the Tressway 5 jerseys that are out there, we are doing a mass. Just come at it with the email. We created an email. It's tresswayjersey@gmail.com. Didn't ever think I'd do an email like that, but tresswayjersey@gmail.com. The first 100 people that submit a picture of them holding a Tressway 5 jersey, but you got to do the way side. You got to show way because otherwise there's a lot of Jayden Daniels 5 jerseys out there, but show Tressway 5 and the first 100 people that submit it to the email, we're going to go through and we're going to try and mail out those Tressway 10 jerseys. 10 is official, and we're going to mail them out as soon as we can.
There you go. TresswayJersey@gmail.com. For the people, Anthony. They did it for the people. You love to see it.
Now that's super dope. Were you one of those kids that had a jersey that, put tape over your jersey and
No.
Okay. I was just curious.
As a kid, I had a Julius Peppers jersey. That was a good one. I had a Steve Smith jersey. That was a good one. You want what else is for the people, Anthony? This show. And we're going to do it again tomorrow. See you then.